Welcome everyone to Mindful Sports, where sports is on the mind and the mind is on sports. This podcast is really about delving into the topic in the field of study of sports psychology. As athletes and coaches, there is so much that goes on that can impact our performance, whether it be our confidence, whether it be external factors. There are many things that can happen. And unfortunately, sports psychology has been a hit or miss topic for many years. It is something that we know about and are aware of regularly, but at the same time, it's a topic that many people have scoffed at. From a coach's point of view, they look for mental fortitude, that it mentality, somebody who's really strong and can fight through. They want that finisher, the person that handles adversity. For an athlete, when we look at them playing poorly, we wonder if their confidence has started to get shaken. Maybe they get injured, and in that injury, we all hold our breath when they finally return and wait for that moment in time where they get hit, where they land that jump, where they complete that event again for the first time after having been gone, and suddenly we all exhale. There's that sense of relief that comes from the anxiety of how are we going to handle that moment. These things are all a part of sports psychology. Unfortunately, as soon as you bring the word psychology in, now suddenly there's a major hesitation from everyone in wanting to talk about those and wanting to delve into those areas. Sports is a world where athletes and coaches are supposed to be tough, mentally tough, physically tough, and psychology still has this negative stigma around it about a perceived weakness. If you can't handle something, you're weak. If you're struggling mentally, you're weak. You don't have what it takes. And that's not always the case because these mental aspects play so much into how we can perform. We think about these athletes who lost family members before a big game and how they go out there and still compete. That's a struggle mentally to try and push through that. And sometimes we want to blame poor performances on these, or we think that performance isn't something that should be affected by that. We sit here and say, oh, well, you have to shut it out and move on. And while that can be true, we do have to move past those barriers. That's not always the easiest thing in the world to do. It's not always something that you can just push to the side and move forward with. And trying to treat that as such can be dangerous in the long term for an athlete or a coach. You think about this. It was only 38 years ago that the Association for Advancement of Applied Sports Psychology established an official sports psychology committee. It was 34 years ago that the American Psychological Association created the division of sports psychology. Tom Brady was just a kid when these things were created. This is not something that has been around for ages and ages. Unfortunately, even during the time that it has been around, it's still very much in its infancy. A study that was done in 2008 still found that there was an extremely limited number of other studies that have been done on the topic of sports psychology. This is an important field to really delve into because we are constantly learning more and more about how our mental state can impact our physical state. Confidence, focus, motivation, and other aspects can all play a role in how an athlete performs on a field. Think about a wide receiver in American football. They drop a pass, then they drop another pass, and suddenly they're dropping a lot of passes. And too many of these missed plays can start to cause that player to lose their confidence in their ability to catch that ball. That lack of confidence can then lead into a loss of motivation and attention, which could cause an athlete to easily get caught out of place during a game because they're trying to focus too much on that one area, or they don't train properly. Both of these instances of being caught out of place, not paying attention to what's around you, and not training properly could lead to injuries. Now that athlete is injured, they understand that it was their fault because they weren't paying attention or they pushed too hard. Now they might be afraid of re-injuring that when they get healthy because they're afraid that they're going to push too far, or if they lose focus for a split second, they'll get hurt again. That fear of re-injury can create anything from a slowed recovery time to that athlete overcompensating for the injury and becoming more likely to injure another body part. On top of that, they could even leave sports entirely due to being afraid of getting hurt again. And when we think about specifically injuries, there's so much focus on the physical recovery, getting those body parts healthy again, that we miss out on the mental aspect of it. And that's something that happens quite often in sports, is we think about the physical performances, but we lose sight of the mental mindset that could be behind those performances. And there is little to no help for athletes out there. While this may be a growing field, it is still in such infancy that there is so much more that we could do for these athletes. So, what we want to do in future episodes is really start to dive into some of these topics, talk with players and coaches about how they perceive these things, look at different instances such as injuries, motivation, mastery, being a perfectionist. And we want to delve into the psychological area of these and hopefully help coaches, athletes, and everyone in general to understand how much goes into an athlete's performance and hopefully give tips or ideas on ways that they can help protect themselves going forward and increase their potential and increase their performance. So, again, thank you guys for listening today, and we look forward to talking with you more in future episodes.